Homelessness is on the rise. Every single day, more and more people are becoming homeless. You can blame the financial crisis for that, where prices went up and quality went down. And every single day, I see more and more posts online about people trying to find a cheaper way of living. And I'll include myself in that matter. As a father myself, I need to live in a property, but go back a few years, I didn't. I lived in a car, a van, a caravan, absolutely everything in between, really. Now, one place where I did live had a big impact on me. So let me tell you a story about when I was 18 years old and I lived in a storage unit. Now let's start this off with an overly dramatic intro. Today, I am moving into a storage unit.
Yeah, we got a dead body in a storage unit. The door's unlocked. Looks like a robbery gone bad. We got a dead body in a storage unit. Looks like a suspicious fire.
After being homeless for a year, I needed somewhere to live, and that led me to living in a shared house. Now, living in a shared house was great and all, but it just wasn't for me. And when I went travelling, the landlord messaged me, asking when I'm coming to collect my things. To my understanding, she didn't think I was going to come home. She thought I was completely gone. However, that was never the plan. I planned to stay there for as long as possible. So, rather than talking out with her, I decided to just pack up my stuff and leave. Now, whilst I lived in this house, I started travelling, and I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to expand on this more. So I had the idea of buying a van, converting it, and living in it. But I needed to save up for that. You see, paying rent in a room in a shared house was expensive. I was paying £500 per calendar month at the back end of 2017. So I started thinking of an alternative place to live. I didn't want to live in my car again, so I discovered storage units, and there wasn't one far up the road from where I was staying. I viewed it, it seemed nice, and they said I couldn't live in there. So I packed up my stuff and moved straight into a storage unit for £90 a month. Have you ever cried as an adult? Because I did the first night I lived in a storage unit. I didn't cry when I was made homeless, but living in the storage unit was one of the loneliest points of my life. At first, I slept on a duvet on the floor. The floor was concrete and cold, the walls were metal, and it was winter. And later on, I upgraded to an airbed. I was friendly with the staff who worked at the storage units. They may not have known that I was living in there, but from my good intentions that I perceived, they let me use the kitchen. It was very useful to have on hand. The storage unit itself was located in the middle of a hallway. There was plug sockets outside, which I wired a cable through the roof to so I could have electricity in the unit. I chucked up an internet booster, as I didn't have any signal when I was in there. Over the years, I've received a lot of questions about how I locked my storage unit, and in my opinion, it was quite tactical. On the outside of the storage unit, I hung my lock, the lock that I used when I wasn't there. It was placed on the door, so if someone walked past, it would just look like an ordinary storage unit. But along closer investigation, you'd realise it's actually been locked open. This means that no one could lock me inside. And then once I was in the storage unit, I locked it with bungee cables. Now, a lot of people might think this is stupid, but let me explain. The bungee cables were hooked onto the door and stretched along the side of the wall. This meant that on the outside, you couldn't open the door. And this stood the test of time, as at one point, someone tried to break into the storage unit. They were rattling against the door and trying to get their fingers in, but these bungee cords held up. I had two. I had one at the top and one at the bottom, and they worked. It meant that I didn't have to drill any holes into the metal walls, and it kept everything more streamlined.
Today, we're looking at a video uploaded by a genius called Oliver, who for some reason has decided to move his entire life and live inside a storage unit.
Did you know that many storage unit complexes have 24-hour access? This means that you could use them at any point of the day, 7 days a week. This was beneficial for me whilst living in a storage unit, as it meant I could come and go as I please. Staff were only on site 9 to 5, 6 days a week, so at any other point of the day, I could do what I want. Being stealthy was a priority. I didn't want to get caught. I didn't want anyone to know I was there, which is why I didn't release any videos until after I left. I didn't cause any suspicion to the staff that I was living there because, well, I didn't want to be caught. And of course, storage unit locations do have CCTV. However, no one is watching those cameras all the time. The cameras were only checked once an issue was raised and they needed to be checked. Luckily for me, that never happened whilst I was living there. I showered at the swimming pool and brushed my teeth using the facilities on site. I worked as a delivery driver 7 days a week so I could get free food. I paid £90 a month for this storage unit and I saved every single penny for my future, and that future was to buy a van and start travelling. But when I look back to this minute part of my life, these 2 months that I lived in a storage unit, it's safe to say that it was interesting. It was isolation. I isolated myself away from the elements to get away from winter. I was able to work out what I needed to thrive and survive, and I discovered that it wasn't a lot. You see, you don't need a lot in life, you don't need a massive property, you don't need all these things. So I guess living in a storage unit shaped me somewhat. And I get a lot of questions to this day, did I fake living in a storage unit? And to be honest with you, no I didn't. I spent every single night in that unit. That was me, that was my life at that point in time. But more importantly, I saw the benefits of living in a storage unit, and that wasn't just the money aspect, I guess. That was the growth. The learning of who I am as a person, because ultimately I didn't know who I was, and maybe I still don't know who I am today. So yeah, I'm glad that I lived in a storage unit. I'm glad that I got to experience the experiences that I did. And yes, it was cold. It wasn't a happy, dappy life living in a storage unit, but the benefits of doing so and saving the money was great. And as I look to the future in the world today, seeing the financial crisis and how everyone is being affected, I think back to when I lived in a storage unit and realised that I was ahead of the game. There are people to this day becoming homeless. There are people to this day contacting me because they've seen my videos online and they now live in a storage unit. It's crazy to see how this world has gone, and I guess I'm fearful for what comes next. So if you have found this video because you'd like to live in a storage unit, honestly, go for it. If it means that you are off the streets, then do it. It might not be a safe option, because obviously you have to think about the risks of fire, your mental health, and vitamin D deficiency, but apart from that, I'd rather you live in a storage unit than be homeless. I'd just like to give a big thank you to everyone who has made it this far in the video, so thank you so much for watching it because this video means a lot to me. And if you have a spare second, please make sure to leave your views in the comments below because I'd love to read them all. I'd also be grateful if everyone could click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And for everyone else who is struggling out there and has come across this video because you could be homeless or just intrigued about another way of living, just remember, you're not alone, and I care about you.